Have you ever been in a situation where you were up against someone much bigger and stronger than you? Maybe you were the smallest kid on the football team, or maybe you had to stand up to a bully at school. Whatever it was, we all have that one story of being outmatched and outnumbered. And in those moments, it can be easy to feel like there's no hope, that it's impossible to win. But that's exactly how David must have felt when he went to battle against Goliath. In this episode of the Short Stories podcast, we're going to look at the story of David and Goliath and discover some of the untold lessons behind the battle. We all know the story of David and Goliath. The Philistines and the Israelites are about to go into battle, and the Philistines have this big guy named Goliath who walks around and challenges the Israelites to fight him. And every day he does this, and the Israelites are too afraid to do anything. So one day David comes along, a young boy who is just a shepherd, and he steps up to Goliath and fights him and kills him. But what if I told you that David didn't actually kill Goliath? Now hear me out. We all grow up hearing this story with a couple of key details ingrained in our minds. Number one, that Goliath was killed with a stone to the forehead and a slingshot. And number two, that this took place during a battle between the Israelites and the Philistines. But both of these details are not actually found in the biblical account. In fact, they were added hundreds of years later. When we look at the original story in 1 Samuel, chapter 17, verses 32 to 51, there are two things missing. Number one, there's no mention of a battle taking place. The story begins with David as he is visiting his family and friends in the camp of Israel. They are staying there for a while because Saul, their king, has called them together to wage war against the Philistines. But there is no immediate threat. It's not like the Philistines are marching on Jerusalem. The Israelites aren't terrified and preparing for battle. They're just chilling out for the moment, and David is hanging out with them. Number two, the story doesn't say that Goliath was killed by a stone to the forehead with a slingshot. In fact, it doesn't even say that David used a slingshot at all. Verse 40 says that David had 5 smooth stones in his bag, and verse 49 says that he dipped his hand into his bag, pulled out a stone, and slung it with his sling. But it never says where he threw the stone or what happened after he did. So if the battle wasn't happening and there's no mention of Goliath's death, then how did David defeat Goliath? Well, to answer that question, we need to take a closer look at the text. When David first showed up to King Saul, he asked the king for some food so he could give it to his brother as a gift. But Saul responded by giving him armor instead. As you can imagine, this armor probably looked pretty ridiculous on little David. He was just a small, skinny shepherd boy, and here he is trying to put on the biggest, heaviest armor that Saul had. It was clearly too much for him, because it ended up being really uncomfortable. So David removed the armor and went and did his own thing. And this is where he would end up meeting Goliath. Goliath came over and started insulting the whole army of Israel, and David, enraged by Goliath's insults, confronted him. And this is when King Saul heard about the confrontation and came over to talk to David. Here's what Saul said to David, quote, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But what if I told you that Saul was wrong? That David was in fact more than capable of fighting Goliath? After all, he was the champion of wrestling in his hometown. So what did David do that proved to Saul that he was indeed capable of fighting Goliath? Well, he answered King Saul by saying, "Your servant used to be a keeper of sheep for his father, and there came a lion and a bear and took a lamb from the flock. I went out after him and caught him, and I slew him. The lion and the bear, when they saw me, fled." What's interesting here is that David didn't say that he killed the lion and the bear. He only said that he slew the bear. To slay someone means to kill them, but it also means to defeat them, to beat them in battle. So David didn't necessarily mean that he actually killed a lion and a bear, but rather that he defeated them in battle. If this is true, then that means that the entire time David was working as a shepherd, he was also training himself as a warrior. He wasn't just hanging out with sheep all day, he was getting ready to fight. This is why David was so confident when he went up against Goliath. He knew that he could beat him in a one-on-one battle. He didn't need any fancy armor or weapons to do it. He was strong enough and skilled enough on his own. This brings us to another important lesson, that we should never underestimate ourselves. We may think that we're not capable of doing something, that we don't have what it takes to succeed. But if we only had faith in ourselves and trusted in our own abilities, we would realize that we can accomplish anything. Just like David, we may not have all the resources or the advantages that someone else has, but that doesn't mean that we can't win. We just have to believe in ourselves. David was so confident in his ability to defeat Goliath that he refused to use the armor that Saul offered him. He knew that it would only weigh him down and slow him down, so he chose to fight Goliath with nothing but a staff, a stone, and a slingshot. And that's exactly what he needed to win the battle. But what about the Philistines? They must have been pretty scared when they saw Goliath fall, right? They probably thought that the Israelites were going to come and destroy them. But that's not what happened at all. In fact, the Philistines continued to attack the Israelites, and the Israelites continued to defend themselves until the Israelites won the battle. So if the story isn't about a great victory for the Israelites over the Philistines, and if Goliath wasn't killed, then what's the point of the story? Well, the point of the story is that no matter how big or strong our opponent is, if we have faith in ourselves and trust in our own abilities, we can overcome any obstacle. We don't have to be the biggest or the strongest. We just have to be brave and have heart. That's what David had when he went up against Goliath, and that's what we need to have when we face our own giants. So next time you're feeling discouraged and think that you can't do something, remember the story of David and Goliath and have faith in yourself. You may be surprised at what you can accomplish. That's all for this episode of the Short Stories podcast. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope you learned some valuable life lessons. If you did, please make sure to subscribe and leave a review. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.